She was a person who deeply cared for her family. And at the time of this crime, the 35-year-old worked at Burrell Behavioral Center in Moberly, and she lived in Huntsville, Missouri. Her family knew that she was in a years-long relationship with a man named James Addy, and the two of them were planning on getting married toward the end of April 2018 at a hotel in Columbia, Missouri. Apart from all of that, Mally also had a son named Declan from a previous relationship. So, our case starts on a night in April of 2018. A man named Glenn McSparran was taking a shortcut from his mother's house in Monroe County, Missouri, on a Friday night when he saw a car pulled over on the side of the road. It was a dark, back country gravel road, and it was surrounded by woods with a creek running across the road. And Glenn said as he got closer, he saw someone laying in the road. He said, "My headlights came over her body in front of the car, and when I saw her, I swear that my heart stopped. She was not moving." Glenn had discovered the body of 35-year-old Molly Watson. She had been shot in the back of her head at close range. When he called 911, he was asked to check for her pulse, but he already knew she was gone. He said, "I looked her in the eye, and I could tell she was gone." When the police launched an investigation into this case, they ruled out robbery gone wrong. Molly was found still wearing her engagement ring. And as they investigated her car, they found a marriage license with her and her fiancé's name, 51-year-old James Addy. The wedding date was just 2 days after she was discovered. Molly was someone who loved to sing. She loved to make costumes. She posted video diaries here on YouTube. She was excited to get married to James and, in fact, bought 2 wedding dresses because she couldn't decide on just one. It was to be her second marriage, her first in an Indian divorce. During the breakup, she became pregnant with Declan. After that, she was in a romantic relationship with former childhood friend Amber Brady, and their relationship continued for about 5 years. Amber said, "Molly was actually my first girlfriend. I was hers. She was married at the time, and I was too. But things weren't going so well for either of us. I think we could talk, we could communicate, and we liked doing a lot of the same things. It just seemed to click." But while the two were living together, Molly got a new job at Moberly Area Correctional Center, where she met James Addy, who worked as a corrections officer at the prison. Amber said she caught the two of them in a motel together. She said, "I went up there and I knocked on the door and Molly answered. James Addy was getting dressed and leaving, and that wasn't good." Amber said there was another encounter at a gas station where she saw Molly and James together. She said, "I didn't have any type of friendship or anything to do with Molly after her relationship ended. She blocked me on everything," which, that was fine. I mean, it wasn't a good breakup. Molly's brother, Tim, said Molly was absolutely 100% in love with James. Crystal Graves and Tabitha Schlib, who were hired to do hair and makeup for the wedding, said that it was supposed to be a Disney-themed wedding, which is probably what I would do if I ever had a wedding. She was so excited, said Crystal. We'd been working on a wedding that was Beauty and the Beast, and we were so we're very familiar with doing this Disney-themed wedding. But even as Molly was wedding dress shopping and invitations were being sent out, her family said even after 7 years, they were still really uneasy about James Addy. Her brother Tim said James would just never look you in the eye. He would never talk to you directly. He was very evasive, and he put off bad vibes to everyone. In fact, some of her family had reached the point where they told Molly that they weren't going to come to the wedding at all. It's very sad. A family member said, my last text to Molly said, "You know how I feel about weddings and funerals. I kind of have a thing anyway. I just kind of avoid weddings and funerals. Never would I have thought that I would be going to her funeral next week instead of her wedding," which made me so sad. On April 25th, 2018, 2 days before Molly was killed, she and James had gone to the county coroner. I filmed many true crime videos. County recorder's office to apply for their marriage license. Mark Price, the Randolph County recorder of deeds, prepped the couple's license and said James seemed kind of perturbed by some of his questions. Mark had asked if he'd been married before, and James was just like, well, why do you need to know that? Authorities say that James claimed that he and his wife, Melanie, had divorced and that she had been in a car accident and had later passed away after being removed from life support. Apparently, James had kept putting off wedding preparation meetings because he said that he had to deal with the funeral arrangements for Melanie. On April 27th, the day that Molly was murdered, James Addy, I hate to use their last names, had dropped off the centerpieces and the donations at the venue. Decorations. I cannot speak, I'm so sorry. He had dropped off centerpieces and decorations at the venue. The wedding planner said he seemed just like he did in every other meeting when I met him. Very quiet, didn't say much. And I do recall as I was walking him out the door, I asked if he was getting excited, and his one comment was that Molly was driving him crazy. It was later that same night that Glenn found Molly's body. Glenn had been on that road once before that evening. He was taking his daughter to his mother's house. And on that first trip, he said he had seen 2 cars. The other was being driven by a short, older man. And in fact, Glenn had talked to this man. He had asked them if their car was stuck. And he said, "I don't know where they're at. It's going to be a while." And Glenn remembered, the more he thought about it, the more he thought, something is not right. I'm gonna go back by there on my way home. And that's when he discovered Molly and called the police. Authorities, of course, considered the people close to Molly in her life. She'd been dating James for 7 years, and he worked as a lieutenant at the Moberly prison. They were planning to get married. They found this marriage license. And since James's listed address was in Santa Fe, Missouri, the police headed there in the early morning hours of April 28th. However, they were in for quite a shock when they got there. James he had been cheating on her for the last 7 years. At this point, authorities are really looking closely at James Addy and his potential involvement in the murder of Molly. James told the police that he went to visit a friend on the night of April 27th, but that friend had not been at home. Melanie told the police that James left around 7, and Emma stated her father had come home much later than he initially said that he would. She also recognized the bloody t-shirt found at the crime scene as her father's. Further circumstantial evidence pointed to James when a 911 caller reported seeing a man acting suspiciously at the crime scene that night. The caller, Glenn, stated he was going to his mother's home when he came upon the 2 cars, as I said. Glenn described the vehicle, and it was similar to James's car. Upon examination, experts believe that the tread marks of the tires left at the scene were consistent with James's car. Furthermore, 2 inmates testified that James talked to them of putting someone face down in a ditch. At the trial, prosecutors presented a theory for James Addy's motive for killing Molly Watson. They argued that he had told her that Melanie was his ex-wife and had died in a car accident, and she had discovered that it wasn't true. Forensic searches of Molly's phone indicated that the day before she was murdered, she was looking for Melanie Addy's obituary. Melanie, we're going to talk about her a little bit more in a minute. Molly's autopsy was conducted by Dr. Carl Stacy, a forensic pathologist and faculty member at the University of Missouri. He testified that the autopsy revealed an entrance wound, but no exit wound, and the projectile was removed from Molly's skull. The brand of ammunition found at James Addy's home matched an empty box located at the crime scene. A prosecutor in the closing arguments said that the way Molly was killed was cowardly. The gun was pressed against her scalp from behind. Molly loved her son and spending time with her family, and she will be greatly missed, her obituary said. Declan shared photos of himself with his mom to show the judge before James's sentencing. He also wrote a letter that was read before the court. "You took one of the most important people in my life away from me. She was an amazing, smart, and beautiful person." Declan wrote that his mom made good decisions for him, and that she only made one real wrong decision: trusting James Addy. "The only reason she believed you was because she loved you, and she looked past your flaws, and she was probably willing to walk to the end of the earth for you, and you couldn't be a little bit honest with her, or anyone, for that matter," the letter said. "You took my mom away from me. You took her son away from her. Here's the bottom line. You now have to face the consequences of your action, and I hope that you now have to face them every day for the rest of your life." James Addy did not take the stand at his own trial, but read a statement in court during his sentencing, in which he read a love letter to the woman that he had been convicted of killing. He also asked for a new trial, claiming that his defense attorney was ineffective, and that they did not present all of the evidence in support of his case. His now ex-wife, Melanie Addy, is very much alive and never in a car accident. She says it was only after the police showed up at her door the night of the murder that she discovered her husband of 23 years had been in a 7-year relationship with Molly. she fully believed he was capable of murder. He was a pretty selfish person. He could be controlling and intimidating. It could be challenging, Melanie Addy said. It just seemed like something he would do to fix a problem. Melanie Addy said she never suspected her husband was having an affair, and she thought that her ex-husband was dedicated to his family. The couple has 2 children, a daughter Emma and a son, Ben. Melanie Addy worked as a teacher's assistant while James worked as a correction officer. She said he seemed the same all the time. He would get off work at 3, and usually he'd get home at 5, and I would say, "Why are you always so late?" And that would be an argument, because he didn't want to tell me anything. At one point, Melanie said that her ex-husband did go off on trips. One was to Florida that James Addy told her was for work. One was a trip to Mexico that she said he told her was a getaway with friends. She said, "I never really knew his work friends, so it seemed plausible." On April 27, 2018, everything seemed normal. Her husband seemed like he always did. About 7 o'clock, he came to the living room where I was, and he said he was going to a friend's house. Melanie said she went to bed. She woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of him snoring next to her. And she said she did what she always does, which is get up and move to the couch in the living room. About 30 minutes later, she was awakened by police lights outside and the police at her door. Just a few weeks after James's arrest, Melanie filed for divorce and was granted. He had always been very hard on me about how a wife should act and how life should be, and then he did this. He had an affair, and that's okay. No, we were done, she said. Melanie takes it upon herself to search the house she shared with James to try to find any evidence of his affair with Molly. And she found photos of them together at Disney World in the lofted storage area of their garage. And she asked herself over and over how she could have missed evidence of this affair. James Addy was convicted of first-degree murder and armed criminal action for Molly Watson's death. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 10 years. He has since maintained his innocence and is currently working to appeal his conviction. Justice has been served today. James Addy will never be released from prison in the state of Missouri, said Monroe County Prosecuting Attorney Tally Smith in a statement after his sentencing. His actions destroyed 2 families, the family of his victim, Molly Watson, and his own family. So, that is the case of Molly Watson and James Addy. When I was researching this case, I got so angry. Like, okay, 1 family is not enough. You have to have 2. And not only, okay, I think there are different types of affairs. There's one where you are just sleeping with somebody, like, not emotionally connected or making plans for the future, anything like that. And then there's the opposite, where you are completely deceiving this other person. You know, in the one where you're just sleeping together, y'all kind of know what the story is, you know? And there's no deception of any kind, at least in my mind. Maybe there, obviously, there probably is. But in this other one, you're like living this double really couldn't have possibly spent that much time with her, like from 3 to 5, or, excluding travel time. That's not a whole lot of time to have this 7-year relationship. Obviously, I wasn't there, so I'm not 100% sure about what was going on as far as that goes, and I really couldn't find a lot of information about their actual relationship. Although, it makes me incredibly sad when people are taken from this earth for such a dumb reason, Everyone has a limited amount of time here on earth, but when someone takes it from you without your consent, it makes me extremely furious. I don't know. I am sad for her family. I'm sad for Declan, and I just think that so many of these cases could just be solved if people were just honest to each other. And it makes me just so defeated sometimes at the amount of atrocity we live with here every single day in this world. All he had to do was tell her he didn't want to get married, I mean, why even propose? One has to wonder if he was thinking about getting rid of Melanie instead, and maybe didn't because they had children together. That's usually the case, where you get rid of the one that you are with to be with the new one, right? I mean, Chris Watts, hello. So, it's just sad, and the prosecuting attorney was right. He ruined 2 families by just not sacking up and either making a decision or telling the truth, and then murdered her like a complete coward. Thank you guys so much for being here today. There's a very loud car outside, so I'm gonna stop by saying I'll see you soon.